Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional chiropractor connection out in Scottsdale, Arizona with Dr. Stuart Hoffman. Stuart, can you get us started by just introducing yourself and reflecting on that time in life when you decided you wanted to become a chiropractor, where you were at, what you were up to, and what attracted you to this path?
Absolutely. And thanks for having me. I am the president of Chirosecure, a malpractice insurance carrier. I created it for chiropractors, with chiropractors, and as a chiropractor, I oversee and help manage each of our doctors that run into a particular, let's call it incident, situation, something that is concerning to them between the doctor and patient that may or may not become, let's call it a malpractice claim. But either way, myself and my sons work with the doctors, coach them through these types of situations. So that's what I do in my current role, and I have for the last 31 years. But prior to that, I became a chiropractor for a number of reasons. Number one, I have two brothers that are both chiropractors, and both of them preceded me. And when I was a teenager, 18 specifically, one of my brothers was in chiropractic school in the clinical setting. And I was moving from New York out to California to the, good old California, except there was a wall in the way. And I drove right into it. And I wound up in the hospital in critical care. And my brother came in, and it was this little rinky-dink hospital. And I'm not going to get into all the particulars. It's a good but long story. Uh, as an ignorant student, he did what so many people would do, and that was see me all hooked up to all these monitors and everything else and said, "Holy crap, he needs an adjustment." And I'm semi comatose, running high fever, all of these things. And he checks my neck, adjusts it, and 3 hours later, all of my vital signs normalized. And they were able to transfer me at that point to a bigger facility that was able to handle the next, what would be the beginning of the next year of my life in terms of broken bones and healing and getting back to normal. And that wasn't enough, though, to get through my head that, okay, chiropractic just saved my life. But that didn't mean I wanted to go to school, didn't mean I wanted to go become a chiropractor. I just got out of school. But I went down to Atlanta to see my other brother while he was in school. And this gentleman named Jerry Klum sat me down. And that was about 43 years ago. And he suggested that I get myself together. That's a nice way to say it, right? It's not how he did it, but it's a nice way to say it. And he adjusted me that day. And it was almost like if you think about a model spine and you're just moving the bones around and feeling it and seeing how they move and the articulations in there. And when he adjusted me, it felt like he didn't know I had any soft tissue surrounding my spine. Those bones just moved right into place nice and easily. And it was amazing. And I went and left his office. And in the middle of the afternoon, I went and fell asleep, which was not a normal occurrence. And at that point, there was a meeting in Atlanta called the DE meetings, which Dr. Sid Williams, the founder of the Life Colleges, headed up. And I was one of those people that went there, went to the student meeting, listened to all of these incredible practitioners. And it was at that moment that I realized I need to be here. I need to do this because these people were so focused on serving other people for the sake of humanity, for helping people. And that was something that was always really attractive. When you can get out in the world and be of help to your fellow citizens in any way, it's a worthy deal. That's my opinion. And as a chiropractor, I've had the gratification of being able to be part of uh, people's lives changing as a result of administering the appropriate care to them and their families, all the way from people bringing in their brand new baby all the way up until their deathbed. And, as a result of that, I've lived a life blessed. And I am thankful. I am grateful every single day. Even though I don't practice as a chiropractor in today's environment, I oversee the malpractice company, and I take those same tenets into this business, to where every single morning we start out with a team huddle where I talk about something of gratitude or a morning message or something to get all of us in sync and on the same page, so that when my team answers that telephone, they better have the right answers, the right attitude, the right smile on their face. Because whether you're adjusting somebody's spine and helping them directly with their health going forward, or whether you're putting in an inspirational word, a good message to somebody, you're listening to them, we're still making a difference in people's lives. And the last thing I would say about it, Ben, is for my purpose, life is about inspiring other people. And as a chiropractor, I believe we have no greater duty than to inspire others. We can do that with our words, we do it with our adjustment. And as an individual, we can inspire other people. And that's, to me, life lessons. And that's what I've gotten from all of these years of being a chiropractor and being on boards and being on committees within the chiropractic profession.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I did some math in my head based on your story, and you said 44 years ago you were at Life College, and 31 years ago you started Chirosecure. So can you kind of just paint a picture for what your student experience was like, what you gravitated towards, what pathways that you were really going deep into, and maybe speak about your experience getting out of chiropractic school as well, like how you set up your office, what type of practice you developed, maybe just any details that you can share with students about what it was like to be a chiropractor back then, or even today, just based on your observations with your kids?
Sure. Uh, I I hated school growing up, but once I got into chiropractic college, I feel like I was in the best place on earth at the right time. And I go back all the time. I support in showing up. I support financially in any way that I can, because I had such an incredible experience the entire time I was there. And I went there with a very specific intention. And when you go with intention, usually you get more out of it. And one of the things that I've also learned is when you go and you play all out, you're going to get so much more out of something. So taking biochemistry, okay, I got by. Taking some of the classes, I got by. But when it came to philosophy, when it came to adjusting techniques, I wanted to be a master. I wanted to understand the history of this profession. Where did we come from? Why did we come from that point? And how did we get to where we are, at least at that point in time? And that was so interesting to me, and it still is to this day. But I hooked into the adjusting because I saw that as the modality that I was going to have primarily to help people. And with both of my brothers preceding me, they both focused on upper cervical work. They weren't exclusive, and neither was I. But the concept was if you can master the upper cervical region and how to adjust it with specificity and mastery, you can do anything in terms of helping somebody. So I focused on that as well. I would be part of three of us in my class that would bring other people into put on seminars for us students. We had a great time with that. We had people like Tom Whitehorn, one of the originals, and he taught my brother in New York upper cervical work. And what he would say is, here's the class, but if you want to really learn it, then you'll come to my office once a week on a Thursday night or whatever it happened to be in Brooklyn all those years ago. And I brought him to Atlanta to teach us upper cervical work. And then it was interesting because that was when I was brand new in school. And by the time I had our first upper cervical class, the instructor was brand new and actually asked me to assist in teaching my own class, upper cervical work. There's so many people that are well beyond me. I still take, last fall, I went to Florida to take an upper cervical seminar because they're doing such incredible things with technology, with the art, the science, all of it, and keeping that philosophy as the base. Because there's a lot of professions that realize chiropractors get incredible results and they think that they can pop a bone here or there and get people well. And by and large, some people will get well. But what makes chiropractors unique and distinctively different than all other healthcare professions is the philosophy that we live under and we use to guide us in our approach in every single thing that we do. So that took me all the way through school. And then when I got into practice, well, when I got into student practice, I only had one goal. Both of my brothers graduated their classes number 2 in terms of size of student practice, and they got an award for that. The only thing I wanted getting through school was to be number 1. And I was, and it worked out well for me. And so when I left school and I went to practice in Michigan, I opened up my own office after being 9 months with one of my brothers. And it's always good to have a mentor and to learn and all of that, which we can touch on. But I opened up my own office. And I thought because I was so good, people would just know I'm there and they would flock and they would knock my door down. And then one day while I'm sitting behind this massive desk, because I needed a big desk, I get a phone call and it's Dr. Sid Williams. And in his Southern drawl, he'd ask, "How's it going, boy?" And I'd say, "Oh, it's going good." "No, it's not." And it's like he friggin' knew what was happening in your head. And he said, "You need to get out of that office and go introduce yourself to people." And I won't get into the whole story, but I did. Life worked out well. I wound up over the years with 14 different offices. I've had about 50 doctors work for me over the years, whether it be as an employee or independent contractor or as a partner. And I've done many, many different things in terms of the practice aspect. And things evolve. To practice today is not what it was back then.
Yeah, and I'm wondering just as a segue, what you just mentioned right there, a lot of students have questions about their options when they get out into the real world and they have the ability to either be an independent contractor, do an associateship and be an employee, or go into a practice that they may one day become a partner. Can you maybe just unpack a little bit of your perspective on those different options for students, and maybe touch on the pros and the cons, or touch on just what your perspective was on what would work best for different types of emerging practitioners in the field?
Sure. Whether it be myself or one of my sons that works here as well, uh, we do a lot of speaking out in the profession, whether it be at the schools to the student body, uh, or putting on risk management type seminars at different states, or uh, different management groups that ask us to come in and work with them. Uh, One of the things that I've started adding into our talks, no matter who it's in front of, is what are the trends? Because one of the things as a business, I've been able to see trends a little bit before I need to. And as I do that, it allows us to be nimble. We can pivot on a dime and be really that much more um, there for our doctors. Uh, so this is no different in terms of what happens when you get out of school. There's always the option to go and open up your own practice. Okay, but most people come out of school with now hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, and it costs at least what, 150, you can do bare bones, but maybe $150,000 to open up a nice office. And that's a big, big risk. And some people can do it and they can do great. Most of those people have someone backing them, whether it be a parent or a spouse or an inheritance, or a banker that just has a lot of faith in you. When I graduated, the economics were nothing like they were today. And I went to the bank and they said, no. I went to the next bank. No. Went to the next bank. Well, I met a realtor and he took me around and I found the office I started out in. And that realtor had so much faith in me. He introduced me to a banker that actually said, I don't know why, but I just have faith in you that you're going to do really well. And he gave me money. I was 24 years old and I'm opening my own business. Who would do that? And, looking back, it's crazy, but he did. And I opened up that office and they got paid back over and over and over again, because loyalty is a big thing to me, whether it be someone to me or me to someone else. I think it's critical, but that becomes an option no matter who you are. But the second option that most people pick is they'll go and learn from somebody. They'll associate with a group, with an individual, maybe someone that they've heard speak, or a mentor, or maybe someone that even sent them to school invites them back into their practice. And as you pointed out earlier, maybe that leads to an opportunity that, oh, in 5 years, maybe 10 years, they're going to want to retire. I have an opportunity. If I stick with this, maybe I'll get some equity. Maybe over time I can buy them out, whatever. That's always an option and a good opportunity. But I think that the trend right now is franchising. I'm not even suggesting that you go out and buy your own franchise right off the bat, but so many people are coming out and going into different franchise models because there are different models. And I think you brought it up at the very beginning. Where do you gravitate to? Is it that you want to see high volume and learn from that kind of exposure and experience? Do you want to do a lot of modalities? Do you want to learn rehab? Do you want to deal with auto accidents? What is your role, which is something you, in my opinion, shouldn't be deciding until you're at least near graduation. And then maybe, after graduation and then be open to changing your mind 5 times. But depending on what that is, that's what's happening. If you look back 10 or 15 or even 20 years ago, the medical profession, you were able to see that hospitals were starting to be bought up and be a conglomerate. Medical doctors were starting to be bought up by bigger corporations. Well, that's happening in all of healthcare. You have it in chiropractic, you have it in acupuncture, in massage, all of the allied health professions. And we're just a little bit later to that so-called mode of operating. But you have some really good options out there. And some of those options will say, hey, why don't you take over a franchise or open up your own franchise now that you know how we work, you like it, we like you, and you wind up with opportunities. And I think that that's where so many of the new graduates are going, because what it's done is it's elevated the pay structure for a new graduate coming out of school to be able to earn a decent living day one. And I think that that's something that's important as a profession, that we're earning a good living. And then if you want to be an entrepreneur and open up your own business, then sky's the limit. And some of these franchises even have, more unlimited potential. But that becomes up to you based on how you see yourself. Do you want the headache of owning a business? Do you want the stress of it? Do you want the risk, the ups and downs? If you think about the fact that we're now through COVID, at the beginning of COVID in a few states, doctors were shut down. Could you have afforded to sustain your own business during that period of time? I'm thankful that most were, but what if you couldn't? That's where all of the support and all of these bigger groups come into play. And I think that that's a really interesting option that we have today.
You said two things that I would love to touch on before we get into, what to look for in a malpractice provider. I would just love, you said one thing which kind of sticks out in my head. So the premise of this conversation is that pre-chiropractic is not something that's been actively invested in before by the profession, as far as like creating a structure for it and investing into it as like a whole field of study, a whole population of people that have a potential that we can kind of imagine what the potential of that group is, but until we start to see it in action, we're never going to really know. And you said that your personal opinion is that people shouldn't decide on what pathway they're taking or what technique or practice model they want to do until they're really close to graduation, and then be willing to change it 5 times. I'm just curious, like, why not decide on it in their pre-chiropractic years or their early chiro student years if they've done the work and gotten familiar and are aware of the depths of that field and pathway, and then be willing to change 5 times, but within the context of like, they're still a student, they haven't even, they don't have as much risk yet. That's one question. I'm just curious about your opinion.
All right, let me respond to that.
Yeah.
And
then you never touched on independent contractor, if you could end with that as well.
Fair enough. Thanks for asking that, because I could have been maybe a little bit clearer. Certainly, if you went into this with a mindset that you're so focused on one way of doing things, great, power to you. Stick with it. I'm really suggesting that when we're talking about opportunities upon graduation, that may not be the initial fit. And the other thing is, I remember being told when I was first getting into school, there's only one job I have in going through school other than getting my diploma, and that is to become a sponge and absorb as much as you possibly can. I wasn't as good about that as I was about being direct in what I was looking for. So at this point in life, I just want to encourage people more than anything to just go in with an open mind and an open heart. Because I think when we are open, it doesn't mean it has to take you off of your principles or off of your path in any way. But at the same time, you may find value that you didn't even know existed. And the same upon graduation in terms of opportunities. You may find that you go into something that's just a little bit different because you need a job, and you will come out. And I've talked to doctors for so many years that leave employment somewhere and say, it was a terrible experience. Okay, but tell me something that you learned from there. And they rattle off 10 different things. You can get a good experience out of anything. You can learn from any experience. And that's what I'm encouraging. And the last part is, in terms of opportunities getting out of school, you can certainly be an independent contractor. When I said that you can go bare bones, that's more of what I was referring to, is set up if someone will have you during downtimes or they have too much space for themselves. You can possibly find somebody that's willing to offer up office space at either a flat rent to you, which may escalate over time. There's a lot of different models. Some do it based on a split. You have to be a little bit careful with splits and make sure that it's being done legally, because there are healthcare rules and laws. But there's plenty of models for that out there too. And quite frankly, that is a good viable option. And I could have been more complete on that too.
I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're very busy. I'm just wondering if we could get your feedback on what to look for in a malpractice provider. The way it was contextualized to me is look at where the malpractice insurance company is sort of investing in the profession, where they're giving back, where the allocation of resources is going, and then also, if something was to happen to you, being trusting in that in that company's ability to help you navigate maybe a difficult situation. If you could maybe give your response.
Yeah. When picking a malpractice provider, for me, it's when you're picking a doctor, I think as a doctor, when I coach a doctor, I suggest that the first thing when they meet a new patient or a prospective patient is you have to have rapport. It doesn't take long, if you're a genuine person, a nice person, to create instant rapport with somebody. But then once you have rapport, you have to give enough information to allow for trust to build. It's very hard to build trust, but very easy to lose it. And when you lose it, generally, it's almost impossible to get it back. With malpractice, I feel the same exact way. Building rapport for a group like us is very, very easy. It's giving you the information, and my team is trained to give enough information so that you understand not just price. Most people purchase things based on price alone. And even if we're the cheapest, and we are in a lot of cases, I don't want people to buy even from us based on price. I want them to buy value. When I mentioned that we have talks every single morning for the whole team, this morning was all about value. Why? Because we were going over our quarterly stats, and I recognized something, and I like to acknowledge people. And someone that's been with me for almost 11 years has the highest rate of, I'll call it conversion, from the people that she gets to talk to. And there's no wonder why. She's the nicest person that there is, but she's learned all along the way how to communicate the value of who we are, not just what we do. And when she talks about who we are, or I talk about it, or anyone else here, it is, yes, what are we doing for the profession? You know, Chirosecure, we support a couple of the schools that we believe in. We support very heavily. We show up. As I said, We're on different organizations, different committees, because we want to make a difference in the profession. We also support research within the profession, but every malpractice carrier is going to tell you they support more. So it's okay. And, I'm okay with that. We need more from all of us. We can be competitors, but we can be good competitors. And when it comes down to it, if someone has an issue and they call us, it's not automatically a black star on their record. It's they need help. And we're really skilled at coaching them through these situations. Yes, we have a claims department. Yes, we have attorneys, and we deal with whatever we need to. But just like being a chiropractor, we want to be proactive and be able to use that approach to hopefully avoid things becoming claims just because there was a lack of communication or inappropriate communication or just not a high enough level of skill in the communication to offset the whatever the situation is at hand. And we are by far really good with that. We have incredible people that help our doctors if they do have a claim. But, not just do we do all of that, we wrote our own policy. We know when I talk about trends, we know what's coming. And we always add coverages into the policy and have the most comprehensive coverage within a chiropractic policy because I see these trends and eventually other providers catch up or somewhat catch up, but we're still out there and we're always first. And last but not least, we don't just do it on a micro level. We look at it from 30,000 feet above the ground and get involved globally. I support some of the institutions in chiropractic around the world, even though it does nothing for our particular business, but I think it's important for the profession. And one of my sons is one of two people, and they're both from this business, that are on some of the World Health Organization committees on safety and coding. And he's trying to bring chiropractic into that realm. And he's representing the profession in that way. There are chiropractors, a couple of them in other committees around the World Health Organization. But as a company, we represent, I'll call it allied healthcare, natural healthcare, more than any group that there is in terms of our participation and global reach. So you look at all of those things, and at the end of the day, who's going to take care of you? Who are you comfortable with on the telephone? Who's going to wow you? As I said this morning as the last point, when you hang up that phone, is the person on the other end of the phone going to say, wow, when I need something, I want to call that person back directly because they know what I need and what I want, and they're right there for me. If you can do that, you earn a place in my business. And everybody in this organization represents me every time they're in touch with somebody.
Very well said and very comprehensive. I'm actually taken back by some of the details that you teased out there. That's really informative. So thank you for that. These are the types of conversations and messages that I feel like help students better start to not put their mind outside of school into the real world, but put their mind into the mind of a chiropractor. And these are the things that you have to make decisions on when you get out of school that you really have no preparation or context for. So I really appreciate it. Can you maybe just touch on a couple of different chiropractors that you guys have been able to help, or maybe just from a broader sense, some of the different types of situations that chiropractors find themselves in most commonly, some patterns that you've observed that are unfortunately happening within the profession, so that students know that these are some things that I need to gain more awareness or more education on, and then maybe you can touch on places that you are offering education for students?
Sure. Number one, we have, you know, we'll call them webinars for simplicity, on the chirosecure.com website, or go to Facebook or YouTube and go to Chirosecure. We have classes every month on pediatrics. We have for the female chiropractors, although it really isn't just for females, but that's how it works out. We have a female chiropractor led program for the women out there. We have research. We have all kinds of things that we offer up on a regular basis. And as far as claims and things of that nature, you know, we're a hands-on profession. So you always have to be mindful of the fact that there is an element that can misunderstand. I'm going to say it nicely, because I don't want to assume intent on anyone's part, that there can be a sexual connotation to something that was done. And the communication has to be clear on that. And I teach that in the seminars that I teach. And there are licensing board issues, because when I graduated, if a patient wanted to make a complaint to the licensing board, all they would have to do is find the licensing board, which was not easy. They'd look in the yellow pages. I know what is the yellow pages, and it's not there. It's actually in a section of the white pages for governmental agencies. And if they found it, they would make that call. They would get a form sent to them in the mail. They'd have to fill it out, mail it back, and see what happened. Today, in a nanosecond, you're on the licensing board website and you can make a complaint in 2 minutes. And is it justified? Well, sometimes it is. A lot of times it's not. But these are the things to be aware of. And as far as malpractice itself issues, the two most common things are alleged broken ribs, which can happen, because sometimes I find, especially the newer doctors, will think that you have to get an audible on somebody. And the easiest place to get that is in the mid-back area. And if they don't get it, they think the patient doesn't think they did anything. So they get a running start and they leap and they use as much pressure as they can until they get a pop. And, you know, anyone teaching technique will share with you that that isn't the best approach to take, but we do have it once in a while. And there are things that can cause it, not just too much from the chiropractor, but there are medications that can make a patient more vulnerable and things of that nature. And the other is what's out in the news media, and that's the stroke issue. And as the president of a malpractice company, I'm going to tell you that our position is chiropractors cannot cause a stroke. However, that doesn't mean a chiropractor can't be accused of causing a stroke. And when I said we have incredible representation for our doctors, the last 11 claims of stroke that we took to court, we won. And we don't intend to lose going forward. You never know when you go to court. But here's the rub. You can have the greatest defense in the world. But what happens if your notes are terrible? What happens if you, as the doctor who needs to be a witness on your own behalf, crumbles and doesn't want to go forward? You force the hand of your insurance carrier to settle something for a lot of money that they don't even want to settle because they think they can beat it for and with you. So these are the types of things that show up. And there's, more to it, but I want to leave off with this point. I know after all of these years in chiropractic that if you're a student, if you're a prospective student, if you're a new doctor, you're coming into the greatest profession on the face of the earth. And you have unlimited opportunity based on the profession. The only limitations that exist are the limitations you put upon yourself, which are all self-generated in your own head. And when you get around people that are in a mindset of abundance and service, there is no turning back. I wouldn't replace my career, whether it be practicing, being an administrator, being in the malpractice insurance world, because all of my insureds, in my mind, are my patients, and I treat them that way. So be excited, even when you get nervous, even when you go work for somebody and say, that was a terrible experience. I encourage you to think of 10 things that are takeaways that you can take and look at what you don't want to do and what you do want to do going forward, because there's still value, not just your paycheck. Remember, money is an exchange, price is an exchange, but it's the value that you get. And that's where I'd like the message to go for everyone out there.
And I really do want to honor your time. If you have to go, we could just cut it right here. But if you have time for one more question, you let me know. How are you doing?
Well, considering we didn't talk prior or know what we were going to talk about, I think we're doing well. So let's
All right, let's do it.
complete on what you